witches.
Hi, hello. Welcome back.
We're starting a new
It's time.
Pantheon.
Yeah, it's time we hang out with somebody different.
Yeah. Those darn Olympians. Moving
I'm
on.
actually really excited about the Norse. I used to be so obsessed with like Greek mythology that I started playing like God of War. And God of War is essentially a Greek. It starts off Greek and then they go Norse. And then I started getting more into that. And I was like, this is so fucking cool.
Right? It's really
And
interesting.
then, yeah.
Funny story earlier. I kind of made fun of someone because they said they wanted to go to Scotland or Ireland because they wanted to go where the Vikings were. And I was like, ma'am,
I
Miss
mean,
Ma'am.
they did go there, but like,
But like,
you
no.
trying to go to the original?
Right. Like,
Do you want to go where they migrated to or where they came from?
yeah, I was just like,
To each their
anyway.
own.
Anyway.
Watch, there's going to be some people that are like, Vikings did come from England. Okay. After they immigrated there.
Right. Oh my
But
gosh.
whatever.
Anyway, so we're just gonna dive right in with the creation myths because we gotta start at the beginning, right?
Everyone's got a creation myths.
Yeah, everybody does. So theirs is actually kind of really like I don't know. It's very similar to some of the others. So like before there was like the Earth or the universe or stars or anything, there were these three realms, for lack of a better term. One, I looked this up and I'm still gonna fuck it up, was like an abyss called Ganungagap. Pretty sure that's how you say it. And that was like a just empty, dark, silent place. And that was right in the middle. And then on one side was Muspelheim, which was the homeland of fire. And then on the other side was Nilfheim. Nilfheim? Yeah.
It's like Niflheim.
Niflheim? Yeah.
Every single time we played it, and or like we played God of War, we played like Valhalla or something like that. We had to go to different realms. Will would always be like Nibelheim, and I'm like, it's not it, but okay.
Okay, but that's a good way to remember how to say it correctly. So Niflheim. Um, and that's the home of ice. So like it's fire and ice on both sides. So they like slowly come together and like invade Ganungagap um until they get together, right? Fire and ice, not great. Um so the fire melts the ice, not all of it obviously because Niflheim still exists. Well, still exists. But those drops of water form. I'm going to say this one wrong too, and I fucking looked it up. I just don't remember how to say it. Emir?
Emir.
Um, Emir? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, which roughly is translated to Screamer, which will come back later, who is the first of the godlike giants. So, Emir is a hermaphrodite who could reproduce asexually. And when he would sleep, giants would just leap forth from his legs and the sweat of his armpits. They would just fucking jump out of there, you know? Yeah. It's so fucking weird. I can't even. Because it gets worse. It's like very cannibalistic too. It's like, ugh. So, um, all these giants or godlike giants are just jumping out of a mirror, which is just wild. And then the frost continues to melt, and Autumla, Autumn, Audhumla. Listen, this is even harder to pronounce than the Greek shit. Audhumla um, emerged from the ice. So she's a cow, and she was like frozen in the ice. And as the ice melts, she comes out of it. She feeds Amir her milk to like keep him alive, I guess. And then she would lick the salt in the ice, and that's how she survived. And as she was licking the salt from the ice, she um like unburied, I guess, for lack of a better term, Buri, who is the first of the Ace. Oh, good job. Jesus fucking Christ. The
Aesir.
Aesir tribe of gods. And then Buri had a son named Bor. This is like a little family tree thing. Um, and he married Bestla, who, yeah, that doesn't matter. And then they are the parents of Odin, Vili, and Ve. Um, that's the only reason
Repeat
they're
that.
important. Odin, Vili, and Ve, or Vili,
I think it's
Vili,
Billy. I think it's
and
Billy.
Ve, Vili and Ve, or
I think it's
V,
they.
Ve. I was thinking it was Ve. But then we go back to Amir because, yikes. Um, he kind of is Ginnungagap, like kind of like how Tefiti was an island. He is Ginnungagap. Um, and they're both like, it's really confusing and hard to. I'm just going to read exactly what I put down. Both Amir and Ganugagap are ways of talking about limitless potential that isn't actualized and that hasn't yet become particular things that we find in the world. This is why the Vikings described it as a void, because it is nothingness. But like it has the potential to become something, but it is currently nothing. It's kind of confusing. But the void contains the basic stuff out of which the gods can make things. So when we go into talking about the creation of the earth, we'll talk a little more about that. Um, and Amir's name, Screamer, like it basically loosely translates to screamer, um, which is kind of like symbolism because the scream is the wordless voice. So it's like the raw material from which words are made. So, like, just a scream is just voice, but you can take that scream and turn it into words, which is the same that they did with Ymir. Then I'm kind of going to go out of order from what my notes are because I had the creation of night and day next, but the creation of Earth kind of went right along with the creation of the universe, and then the creation of night and day happened. So, um, the creation of Earth, this is where things start to get kind of cannibalistic ish. So, Odin and his brothers, Vili and Ve, killed Ymir, and they literally like tear apart his corpse and use it to make things. So they took his blood and made the oceans. They took his skin and muscles and turned it into soil. His hair became trees and plants. His brain became the clouds, and his skull was the sky. So like when we look up in the air, we're looking at the inside of Amir's skull, basically. Um, so that's gross, first of all. Second of all, four dwarves, which I don't think. Did I write down their names? Nordi, Vestri, Sundri, and Austri, which translate roughly to northwest, south, and east, or northwest. Yeah, the points on a card, or the cardinal points on a compass. These dwarves go to the different spots on the earth and held Amir's skull up to be the sky. Um, yeah, and all of this is in Gnungagap, so like the earth is supposed to be in between Niflgard. The fuck is it called? Niflheim,
Niflheim
and
in Midgard.
and um and Muspelheim.
Midgard is the earth.
Yeah, Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway, so that's where Amir's body is that they tore apart to make Earth. Um, oh, and his bones and teeth became the mountains. I read that in a different source. So if you climb a mountain, you're climbing up Amir's bones and teeth, which is fucking gross. So that is the
He's got
creation
bones
of
and teeth everywhere.
the universe and of Earth. And now we're going to talk about night and day, which there's like the story of how night and
Oh,
day were
I love
created.
this story.
Right, so there's two different ones. There's like the story of how night and day were created, and then the story of how the sun and the moon were created, and then the stories like smushed together like they're the same people, but they're not. It's kind of like Jesus and the Messiah, and like how it's like 8 different names, but they're all actually the same person. Kind of feels like that's what's happening here, but I don't know. So his sky is, or his head is the brain, or his skull is the sky, and his brains are the
Someone is
clouds.
struggling.
Dude, words are hard. Okay. First day back to like full day time. I know this not like when this is airing, but like this is my first day back after fall break. So having 4 days straight of not having to talk a whole lot, or at least not having to be on, to having to be on is like, huh. Anyway, Odin took. Dude, my dog is probably freaking out because I keep saying his name. I didn't even think about it till like right now. Anyway,
That's so true.
Odin took sparks from Muspelheim and threw them into the sky to create the stars. Um, and then in the timeline, this is when the gods built Asgard, but I'm not going to talk about that because you're going to talk about that, right? Yeah, okay.
Don't take my shit.
And then I talked about the dwarves again, because they're holding up the sky. And they're holding it up because Odin and his brothers were scared that the sky would fall down if somebody didn't hold it up. And again, they're
So it's
named
like
Nordi,
Atlas from the Greek.
Vestri. Yeah. Nordi, Vestri, Sundri, and Austri. I'm probably pronouncing all of this fucking wrong. I promise I'll do better next time. um, then the sun and the moon were created when a man named Mundilfari had 2 children who he named Mani and Sol, which are moon and sun. He gave them these names because he thought they were so beautiful and like perfect. But the gods were mad about that because they thought he was being like kind of stuck up about it and like thought his kids were too perfect. So to punish him, they banished his children to the sky, where they were forced to pull a chariot, one all day and the other all night. Sol would pull a chariot during the day and was given 2 horses named Arvakr and Alsviar. And she was given a shield named Svalin, and she used the shield to protect the earth from the heat of the sun. So, somebody better go check on her and her shield because, climate change. Anyway. um, then Mani was tasked with pulling the chariot at night. He was only given one horse named Alsvadir, um, and he stole two kids from Midgard named Bill and Yuki to help him pull the chariot. So like he just stole some kids. No big deal, you know. Um and while they're like pulling this chariot around the earth or across the sky, I guess. I don't think they thought that the earth was round at this point. Um so like across the sky, they were being chased by these wolves, like giant wolves named Skull and Hati.
Hottie.
Yeah.
Hottie.
Um and they continue to outrun these wolves every night until Ragnarok. I almost went down this rabbit hole, but I was like, no, I'm sure we're going to cover Ragnarok at some point.
Ragnarok is so important to like Norse
Yeah.
mythology.
So I didn't go down the rabbit hole. I read a lot about it, but I didn't take notes on that part. Um, so yeah, then there was another myth. No. So that was the sun and the moon. Then there's another myth that states that night and day were created when a giant named Norvi produced a daughter who he called Not, and Not went on to have a son who she named Dagr. Dagger,
It's probably dagger, something.
which translates to day. And they rode chariots like Money and Soul, except Knots was pulled by a horse named Hrimfaxi, and Daggers was pulled by Skinfaxi. Um, but the reason I say it's confusing and it seems like they might be the same people is because though like some stories say that they were also chased by the wolves Skull and Hati. So it seems unlikely that that would be like the same exact story, but it might be if they are actually the same people and just different names for the same person, like Jesus, the Holy Spirit, all the different names that we have for. I keep using the Christianity terms because those are the ones that I know the best because indoctrination, but um that kind of seems to be the maybe the case there. But yeah, those are the creation of the universe, night and day, and the earth.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice, nice, nice. All right, cool. Trying to figure out which one I want to do first. Let's talk about Yggdrasil first. So Yggdrasil is a sacred ash tree. It's like the focal point of the Viking world. This is where the gods hold their daily things or like assemblies. Um, the tree branches will reach into the heavens, and its roots run deep underground, containing the 9 realms of the Norse world between them. So Yggdrasil is literally just the huge thing that holds all of the realms together. So we have Alfheim, land of the light elves. We have Asgard, which we'll talk about it, and that's the world of the Aesir. We have Vanaheim, world of the Vanir. We have the Bifrost, the flaming bridge, connecting to where does it connect to? Niflheim, is it? Jotunheim. Connects to Jotunheim, land of the giants. We have um Hell, which is the realm of the dead, and then we have Niflheim, which is the world of the dead. We have Svartalheim, which is the land of the dark elves. We had Nidval. I've never been able to pronounce this, even when I've looked it up and I've heard it and I've dealt with it multiple times. But every time I hear it, it's just like it goes in one ear and out the other because it doesn't stick. I don't know what it is. Nidavellir.
It's a
I don't
very
know.
weird language because they have so many consonants that they just shove together that shouldn't go together.
Yeah.
Like, let me say, it's a weird language for someone whose English is their first language, because
Yeah.
we don't smush consonants together like that.
Yeah. And sometimes they don't, the way it is in like this, yeah, I don't know. So, which that place is Land of the Dwarves. We also have like a few other places that are not like realms. It's just part of like these local areas. Oh, Midgard. That's it. I was like missing one. Where is it? Midgard. Um, and Midgard is actually we'll talk about all of this later on probably, but like Midgard is also surrounded by Jormungandr, who is like the world's serpent. Um, so he's often depicted with Yggdrasil. Um, but anyways, so Yggdrasil holds up the nine realms. It also is being taken care of by a little squirrel called Ratatask. Ratatasker. Yeah, I think it's
I
Ratatasker.
enjoy that very much.
The little squirrel's taking care of it.
Makes me think of what's his name, Scrat, from the Ice Age movies.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, so it's what is it? Hmm. uh, they talk a lot about Ragnarok during all of this, and I'm like, I don't want to say any of that.
Right? I know.
um, which is really, it's really really hard. Um, whatever. So there are two wells and a spring that sit within the roots of Yggdrasil. Um, the well of Erd. It also says Erdebrunner, Erdebrunner, Mimi's Brunner, and Hevelgamir, Hevergamir. I maybe have to like burp. Um, so Erdebrunner was the name of the well where the Norns gathered. Norns were a trio of the giant goddesses in Norse mythology that controlled the human destiny. So they're basically the fates.
Yep, that's what I was
The
gonna say.
Norns were made up of three people: uh, Erder or Erd, Verdandi, and Skuld. Erd influenced the past, Verdandi the present, and Skuld the future. So there's a well with that. There is another well which was uh, Mimi's Brunner. This sat underneath the root of Yggdrasil, and this helped lead the giants to Jotunheim. It was the domain of Mimir, esteemed for his exceptional knowledge and wisdom. And I think he's not the god of war, but like very fucking similar. Like Thor is like, I don't know. I don't I don't want to say like he's the god of war and thunder and all of that just because like all of the Marvel things going out there because I have not done my research. The
Right,
only
me
thing I
either.
know is whatever Marvel says and whatever all of the fucking video games that I have played dealing with like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. There's a
Right,
lot of things that you do that you meet all of the gods in that. And then God of War, you're essentially a part of the journey with the gods of this.
right. I mean, most of
So,
my knowledge comes from the Thor movies. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah. So, I don't want to say like that, but I feel like Mimir is the god of war, or at least god of like warfare in a way, because he's like got all that knowledge and wisdom. But whatever. Um, Hevergamir was a spring for and this is believed to be the source of all rivers in the nine realms. It fed um basically everything. It was fed by the antlers of the stag, of a stag. I'm not pronouncing that. I'm not doing that. I don't even. There's a symbol in there. I don't know what that is. um, and the spring lay in the tree roots near Niflheim, and this area was home to the snakes and the dragon Nidhogger. I'm not going to talk about that one because that's a creature that we could probably possibly talk about. Um, but that is something that lives within the Yggdrasil tree. That's one of the creatures. Some other creatures. There is uh, uh, Nighog. Nidhogg, that's what it's called. Um, you have Nidhogg who lives in the Yggdrasil tree. You have Dunir, Dvalin, Dain, and Duerur, which are four stags who lead the tree's leaves, and those are believed to be like the four seasons in a way. Each one appears as essentially one of the seasons. Like one's very summery, one's very spring, one's very fall, and then one's like ice. Um, there is a hawk that is perched between an unknown eagle's eyes that set up high in the tree. Um, so his location is very, very high up in the tree, actual tree itself. And then Ratatask, who runs errands for everything, and essentially keeps it alive.
So Hermes.
Yeah. Um, so a lot of people just interpret that the Old Norse word Yggdrasil is horse of Odin, which mean gallows or gibbet. It's because Drasil means horse, and Ig is one of Odin's numerous aliases. Whether that is true is something different, but there's been a couple of poems that show that. Um, there's also like other poems that have different names for Yggdrasil. They don't know if it's different trees that it was believed to be in the poem, or if it's the same thing, because there was a lot of similarities. I should not have drank fucking Sprite before any of this. I'm over here hiccuping, like trying not to burp. Um, but there's like when you read the poems, I guess the interpretation is very similar to Yggdrasil. So it's kind of like, is this or is it not? Um, yeah, but there's like a lot of poems and all that about Yggdrasil, but it's essentially just like the main tree that holds everything together. Or the whole nine realms together. So if like the tree crashes, everyone crashes. So like Ratatask has a very, very, very important role to fulfill for the rest of his life. And I don't know. I'm not going to go about that because we could talk about him too. Never mind. I was going to say God of War says this about him. I don't know how true it is, but anyways, so now that we have like a general where everybody lives kind of thing, let's talk about the first humans. So the first humans in the Norse myths were known as Ask and Embla. Ask is, I guess, newer Norse. Well, maybe, I don't know. Um, because every single time it shows like how it's actually pronounced, it takes off the R. But it's like, is the R supposed to be involved? Is it not? Like, where is the R supposed to be? So I'm just going to say Asker. That's what I'm going to assume. So
Okay.
Asker in Old Norse means ash tree. Embla is thought to have come from the Old Norse word Almer, which means elm. So they're very similar to the Adam and Eve Christianity creation story. But instead of like Adam being made from God and then Eve being made from the rib, these two were made equal but created from wood, and like separate wood basically. So one is ash tree, the other one is an elm tree. So they are the first human essentially couple, and they are the the parents of all of the humans that were prior to Ragnarok. So it is most commonly accepted theory that Ask and Embla were created by the brothers Odin, Vili, and Ve. Um, they were whittled from wood in the image of a man and a woman. Each of the three brothers gave the wooden image of Ask and Embla images of. Oh, I love my mouse, but there is a button on there that makes you flip back. And I was in the middle of a thought, and now I have to find it again where I was. Okay. Um, they each of the brothers gave these two like wooden things or whatever um gifts so that they came alive. It's like Frosty the Snowman where you keep giving him items and he finally comes alive. um so they, according to some Norse mythology, Ask and Embla came from driftwood found on Midgard by Ve when Odin, Vili, and Ve were like scoping out Midgard. um Ve was the one who took, like, whittled the wood for Embla, and then Vili whittled the wood for Asker. Um, Once they were complete, Odin gave the pair a soul and the breath of life, which brought them to who we are now. Um, Vili gave them the thought, understanding, and the ability to move. Ve gave them the ability to speak, see, and hear, and also gave them good nature, fair complexion, blood to flow through their veins, and a healthy hue. And then Ve gave the first humans clothing. So they literally were just brought to life. And that's kind of how they looked. So these guys are actually like the ancestors of all of humankind prior to Ragnarok. Once Ragnarok came, the shit hits the ceiling and that everything's different now. Um, but these were the two that essentially populated all of Midgard once upon a time. Um, Basically raising, how they put it, several generations of perfect humans. So, and then because they were the first humans, Odin gave them the power to, I guess, rule over Midgard, and trusted them with ensuring, everything was going to be good and dandy after all of that. And then apparently, after many generations, giants and other beings from other realms came to Midgard disguised as humans, and they interbred with the descendants of Ask and Embla. And apparently, this created problems for their offspring because these were supposed to be like good, pure people. And because like the giants and other beings from the other realms came and started to breed with them, they're evil.
They fucked it all up.
Yeah, so like their evil
Literally.
started to become inherited by their descendants, and it was, brought upon shit, which might honestly have like started to lead up to like Ragnarok. I don't know. It's kind of like the Great Flood is what I'm thinking.
Right.
It's very similar. But anyways, that's Ask and Embla, the first humans. All right, cool. So now that we have Yggdrasil and the first humans, let's talk about one of the many realms. Not many, but 9. One of the 9 realms. So we're going to talk about Asgard. So everyone knows Asgard from the Thor movies as the place where everybody lives happily ever after. Um, it is the location of Valhalla, which is the Hall of Heroes, or the Hall of how do they pronounce, like, what do they call it? Hall of Heroes, is it? Or I don't know. Whatever, we'll get to that later. Um so this is the location of the Aesir gods. Um, I'm not really sure the difference between Aesir, Vanir, other than like the different realms. Kind of like how we're like Midwesterners because we were born and raised in the Midwest. And now like I'm down in the South, so but I'm not a Southerner kind of thing. So I don't know if it's just like locations basically. Um, but this is where the Aesir gods live. This also includes Odin and Thor. So Odin and Thor were Aesir. I don't know who else is Aesir, but that's something else we could talk about. Um, Asgard is connected to the human realm, Midgard, specifically by the Rainbow Bridge by Frost. Um, so Asgard is described as a land of unmatched beauty and lush abundance. So it's basically like heaven in a way. Um, it's like Mount Olympus is what they said. It's like it's likened to Mount Olympus in the Greek mythology, but whatever. Um, but Asgard literally means enclosure of the Aesir gods. So it's dwelling of the Norse gods, essentially in Old Norse.
Also, I looked up Valhalla and it's Hall of the Fallen.
Hall of the Fallen. I was like, it's either Fallen, Hero, something. I don't know. um, what is it? So this is where Odin lives, and he can actually, because this is where he lives, and it's so close, essentially to Midgard. He can see all that happens in Midgard, so he can see any good, bad, everything in between.
He
So,
sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake.
I mean, technically, that is his holiday. That is that is Yule. That is Yule. um, so while a lot of people think that Asgard is like heaven, it technically isn't. They have different areas of where you should go when you pass. So, slain Viking warriors who died in battle are brought to one of the two places in Asgard by the Valkyries. And we talked about the Valkyries when it came to uh A Court of Silver Flames. We're going to talk about the real Valkyries
Yes, we
at some
are.
point in time. But Asgard is not technically Norse heaven. Valhalla is where the half of the Viking warriors were taken after death. It does not fit the traditional concept of heaven, rather than the land of eternal rest. It is the place where heroes reside with Odin until Ragnarok. So they like continue their fighting until Ragnarok comes. Um, let's see. So, like many of the pre Christianity faith traditions, people from the Viking Age generally went to the realm of the dead, so Niflheim. In Norse mythology, this realm is known as Helheim. Oh, did I say that wrong? Oh, I did. Not Niflheim. Whatever. Land of Frost and Mist. My bad. Helheim. Um, and it is ruled by the goddess Hel. Now, isn't Hela the sister
In the
in
Thor movies.
in the Thor movies? I don't think they're related at all, but I'm also not sure. Um, and did you know that the Valkyries were the ones who like chose who could go into Asgard and who could not go into Asgard?
I think I did know that.
Yeah, so if Valkyries were like, "Fuck you, you ain't coming in," like you're not coming in, you're like you're gone. It's like what is it? Peter, Saint Peter, or something like that, or whoever in the Christianity way. Isn't he the one
Yeah.
who tells you whether you can come in or not?
Like
Go
he's
into
at the
heaven.
gates. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Um. Whatever.
What a job,
um.
right? Like, sorry, you need to go to Jesus fucking Christ.
I didn't like that. No, thank
so
you.
We're just sitting here, and all of a sudden, Brittany pops up in the window behind me, outside the house. It's dark out in here.
I honestly saw like a bunch of not people, but I like kept seeing the house across the way, and I was like, "Can they see me?" Anyways, oh, that's weird. Uh,
She's really gonna laugh when she listens to this episode
yeah,
and hears me like freak out on air.
right.
Like, how long was she
And
fucking standing there? What a creep.
I don't know. I have no idea. I was not even looking at the screen. But yeah, so you either go to what's it called? Valhalla and Asgard, or you go to Helheim when you pass. I think as a
But
like
it's not like heaven and hell, right?
no,
Like one is not like eternal punishment. It's like
it's I mean one of them you literally are going to have to fight in Ragnarok. The other one is just like you're dead. I mean that's about it. Um Now I don't know because it doesn't necessarily say just because it's kind of one of those like it doesn't it's focusing on Asgard not and everything else. Um but just for funsies, and we always talk about the Christianity spreading their whatever. Norse religion continued well into the 11th century. And despite the widespread like Christian values and religion that was like were happening during this time, they fought hard and long against like their conversion for over 3 centuries.
nice.
They maintained their traditions, and many Vikings quietly practiced their faith until the later part of the 12th century, when Norse gods were reduced to ancient folklore and their temples and statues were destroyed. Thanks, Jesus. Um, so yeah, a lot of the things that could be great for I don't know history, like you could go to like Athens and see all these great monuments from their time, and they were just fucking destroyed. So that's great.
Attack.
Yeah, right? Anyways, so the gods that live in Asgard include Odin, Frigg, Loki, Balder, Hoder, Heimdall, Tyr, and Thor. Frigg is the queen of Asgard, so that's Freya. Um, so Frigg is another word for Freya.
Okay.
Um, but so I guess the Norse gods belong to two tribes, the Aesir and the Vanir, which actually explains like you either come from Asgard or what is it? Vanheim? Yeah, Vanaheim. Um but so anyways, where was I? So a lot of people were thinking that Asgard could be the fabled city of Troy. There has been no evidence that Asgard truly existed in real life. Um because I mean, according to Norse mythology, it belongs in a whole other realm in the middle of a tree, like essentially the tree of life. But some people are like, "Oh, it's the city of Troy," and I'm like, "What?" I I don't know. But a lot of the tales that were passed down weren't necessarily written. They were um tales talked about around like the fire or after a battle or at the feast or something like that. So a lot of there's not a lot of written information on all of this. So it's purely what do they call those things? Not not bards. What's another word? I feel like it's an S word. Not scholars. I don't know. Storytellers in a way. Um anyways, And I'm not going to talk about what happens to Asgard during Ragnarok because that's more of a Ragnarok thing because it only happens during that time. But yeah, so Asgard is essentially where the majority of a lot of the things, whether it be good or bad bullshit, happens. Um, and according to like a map, essentially drawn out by Yggdrasil, Asgard is at the top of the tree.
Okay.
So,
All right.
but yeah, there's Asgard. Don't worry, there's 8 more realms to go through. So we'll get those.
Yeah.
Maybe next time we'll do that. But
I like it. Okay.
all right. Until next time.
Bye.